The information presented in this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the guest are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the podcast host or production team. The host has not independently verified the accuracy of the information provided by the guest. Therefore, the host and production team accept no legal responsibility or liability for any statements or opinions expressed in the podcast. Listeners are encouraged to do their own research and exercise their own judgment when interpreting the content of the podcast.
Welcome to Team Time.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Volleyball is Sharing Stories, Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Chris Bott, and today we have one of the best coaches in the world on the podcast, Glenn Hoag. Glenn is a three-time Olympian, once as a player, twice as a coach, representing Canada on the biggest stage in the world. Glenn started at Sherbrooke University before going to play professionally in France and Italy. As a coach, he's coached with Team France, Team Canada, professionally in France, in Slovenia, and has been at Izmir Arkas since 2010. Now, we had to film the podcast in two sections because we ran out of time when we were in a tournament in Santo Domingo. Given Glenn's dynamic coaching style and ability to balance many aspects of the game, I chose for him DAVIDsTEA's Cream of Earl Grey, which perfectly encompasses Glenn's strong and robust leadership qualities, while also being a favorite choice across many generations. This tea represents a sophisticated approach to the game, which Glenn has embodied throughout his career, which has spanned across several decades. We're here in beautiful Santo Domingo with the Next Gen squad. We have the semifinal coming up today against Puerto Rico. So Glenn was able to fit us in the schedule, which is amazing. So thankful for that. And it's been a privilege to work with you this summer and to learn from you and to hear all your stories and lessons. It's been absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for that. I guess the first question that I have is, your coaching career has spanned over many decades. Yeah. What has been kind of your driving factor in being able to stay relevant in the game throughout its evolution?
I think really it's been about like the beginning, how well I had the chance to have Charles Cardinal as a mentor that formed me as a coach, and always told me to he told me one time, he said that we were doing some planning stuff in my level 4 course for my level 4 certification, and when he saw I was in Paris, I had a really heavy schedule, and he said, okay, let's put the books aside now and let's try to make sense of all this and how you can approach the season and have the best possible outcome. So that was a big eye opener for me. So often people will stick to the theory and don't want to change it. In this case, it was like, yeah, we do have some theory, but the theory doesn't apply here. We need to apply some of it, and the rest we need to kind of figure out how we're going to deal with this. So it's adapting to the changes, and as quickly as possible is the best way to explain it.
Okay. And how has the game evolved over the last couple of decades?
Well, it's evolved in speed, obviously, and athleticism. The athletes, humans always adapt. So as soon as there's a change in the game, like serving, now you see that serving is, for a while serving became dominant in the men's game, and then whoop, all of a sudden, now people are adapting, playing differently, keeping the serve in, the big serves in play, and then trying to recycle and then rebuild a better offense. So there's been adaptation through the years. There's been changes to the rules also. The scoring rules have made it, I think around 2000, has changed the game pretty completely, I would say, in error management and because, everything counted for a point now. So that was a huge change. And execution. So, and since execution is basically based on quality of skills, then that hasn't changed. It's still a skill sport, and the more skilled teams tend to dominate because they can execute better. So, and I think it will keep evolving. I think it mostly from an individual tactical aspect. So, from a setting perspective, to hitters being more crafty, and we can see already servers being not only hard servers but also mixing up the directions, mixing up the trajectory, short and long, and so that's also has been evolving quite fast.
On your team in Turkey, you have players that will stay there from year to year, and there's not so much turnover compared to other pro teams. Are you able to change kind of the seasonal plan from year to year so that they still stay stimulated and still are trying to fight for more? Or how do you manage kind of their interest level, even though
Well, with my club, we're a developmental club, so we try to really always bring new kids from the club up to the first team. We've created a second team that we could, like a farm team, that where players that were junior age, not ready to go up to the senior age, would play in that well, we call it first division, which is not the elite division, and then you supervise that. So you try to create like culture and habit. Has to be like, habit of game plan and stuff like that, which they didn't have, and the young guys when they come in, have to learn all this. So you want to try to maintain. It's like maintaining a base. Have a good foundation, and then players come and go for sure. Even the Turkish players come and go, and then you add new Turkish players that might be older, and you obviously add foreigners that tend to go. They don't last more than maybe 2 3 years. So what's important is keeping your base, keeping your culture, the behavior you're asking, while you're adapting to the changes, and then this is our culture. When you come into the gym, this is the behavior we're asking from you. We want you to be ready. We want you to know the game plan and stuff like that. But it's a lot of coaching because especially in Turkey, not a lot of the kids are well educated, not necessarily so receptive, to not used to studying, not used to having to read and then try to understand, try to apply something. So there's a lot of work in that aspect. But yeah, it's all about culture, systems you establish, and then how you run them and how you adapt to the changes. And you really, and I would say it's a daily thing. Like, you have to always make sure that you stay on top of that culture, and making sure that we continue to thrive with this. Otherwise, if you let it go, then people start taking different roads, and it's costly.
Do you think having that educational component in Canada is results in kind of a different atmosphere in the U Sport League compared to all the leagues in Europe?
I think the fact that it's one of the aspects of having student athletes. What we lack in North America is the leagues, and like players in Europe tend to some don't go to high school anymore, and they just jump to become professional, or the system is adapted even if they go to school, that they can be freed for higher level competition if they're, let's say, identified as a professional athlete. So there's more advantages in Europe for that, but for us, there's a bit less for the athletes. So which make them more, I think, from a cognitive aspect or from an understanding, it's much faster in learning than it is, for example, for a Turkish athlete. But Turkish athletes train more often. So in the end, there's probably a little faster growth with European athletes. But what keeps us, I think, in Canada close to able to perform internationally is that kids that are intelligent and able to have like rational thinking, being able to say, okay, well, this is what we're going to do, and then they apply to it and they catch on right away. You don't need to repeat. Game plan is usually, all our athletes come in with pens to give them the game plan. We give we do the meeting on the opponent, and they take notes. You don't see that much with European athletes. Some do, but in general, in Turkey, anyway, it's not the case.
In terms of if coaches were looking to have a game plan and looking to have some sort of strategy on their team, is there something now in the game that's going on that would allow them to have the most success? Like, is there one type of strategy or one component of the game?
I would say that if you want to work with game plans, like game plan can be very simple or they can be more complex depending on your level of your athletes. But the execution of game plan is based on the capacity of your team to be able to execute it. So you can have the best game plan in the world. You say, I want to run pipe in this, so I run this, and you're not able to execute these things, then then it's not going to happen. So I think you need to adapt the game plan based on the capacity of your team to do it, what you're able to do. And then as your team gets better through the year, you can maybe make the game plan a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more, you can add more things to it. I think that's the way I would approach it. But game plan can be just shot charts. This attacker hits this way, this attacker hits this way. It's part of the athlete's progression. It's part of the athlete's becoming to understand, to gather information and make decisions. It cannot be just a skill-based and execution-based game. Like it's going to get more complex if an athlete wants to move on to further levels. So I think it's to make them think a little bit. It's a good thing, to make them. It could be in practice too. Did you notice this? Ask questions to your athletes. The best way. What did you see here? And what do you want to do? Where did you want to serve? Because you're giving direction again to their brain by saying, "Oh, he wants me to hit in a direction. Yeah, I want you to hit the 5. I want you to hit the 1. I want you to hit to the conflict zone between the passers." And they might not be able to do it, but they'll be conscious that it's going to be something that they will need to learn to do eventually, so become better.
And while we're on the topic of advice for coaches, you've coached all around Europe. There's a lot of coaches looking to make that jump from Canada going into the European realm. What's your advice on making that jump and how they can do it, and what type of things they need to have developed before they arrive, and maybe things that they can look to?
Well, the first thing, you need to know that you're not in a university environment anymore. They will be professionals, and those guys, some of these guys, it's their life. They have families. So they could be challenging you because for them, it's important that they get a contract the year after and the year after, and they want to improve and stuff. So also you'll have you'll be working with different cultures. That obviously won't be the same culture as Canadians. It's completely different in many ways. And so you need to, what I often do is I read the history and the culture of the country I'm going to be coaching in first. Like, Turkey was the Ottoman Empire for a while, so Atatürk came 100 years ago and established a republic, blah, 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 and then look at the ethnicity and stuff like that. So to try to have a little bit more of an understanding of what I'm going to be coming into, same everywhere I go. So that's a big help. The rest is all about, coaching and leadership and all the different skills that you have. Again, it's just a reminder that if they are professional athletes, paid athletes, and you will have as a coach to deal with management. And some management are easy. For my club, they have 100% confidence with me. But some clubs, management is hyper present. Like they're always present, putting pressure on the coach. Often their sponsors say, "Oh, I run a big business. I know how to win." So all kinds of this happens all the time. So just you have to kind of be ready to have this kind of encounter with different people in the club. So.
And how does that differ for an athlete who's looking to cross over? Is your advice the same, to learn about the culture first and then
I would for an athlete. I would for sure, like if they can take time to understand where they're going, not have super high expectations. Some clubs, will pay the players, don't necessarily get good coaches. So the player might have to, reach back at home with a strength coach, get a strength program or so on. Some clubs are super professional and structured like ours, but there's a lot of clubs where it's, "Oh, you're the pro, we want you to perform," and the practices might be not so good. So you have to be ready to, and we try to prepare the guys that come through our system to be ready to face this kind of stuff, and then also be able to communicate with us to know how to deal with the situation. But some of them are easy, some of them are not so easy.
So the title of the podcast is Sharing Stories, Spilling Tea. So you don't need to name any names or countries or teams, but what are some things that people can expect when they do go overseas? Maybe it's in Europe, maybe it's in Asia, maybe South America. Are there things that maybe they need to be on the lookout for?
Yeah, well, there's many things. Food, living conditions. Sometimes maybe, oh, we're going to give you an apartment, but you end up having really like not necessarily a place that's like to your taste. The clubs will try to give you what they can. Um, what else? I mean, get used to having fans come and talk to you, and you need to be respectful and respond to them because they come to cheer you on. They expect players to have the team to have some relationship with the fans. Uh, it's I don't know. I don't have any stories, but I probably have a lot of stories. Right now, nothing comes to mind. But it's. Oh, I just remember my first time in Italy, where I go, we arrived in '84 in close to Pisa in Santa Croce, and they bring us their meal, and like we start eating, and well, we didn't know about primo and secondo. Like first you eat pasta, then you eat the meats and the salad, and then you have the dessert, and after the primo, I was okay. After the pasta, was enough, and then we ended up keeping eating more, and we were 3 hours at the table, and I was just dead and so full and stuff we're not used to, getting used to the foods too, for example, Turkey doesn't have pork, so if you don't like lamb, then you're probably eating only beef as meat and not much else. Anyway, so all these things you need to adapt to, and but it's a great most of the time it's a pretty good experience, I would think. I don't know. I've had some difficult experience when we lost bad seasons with management and stuff, but I mean it's normal in the professional world. Wasn't a surprise. So.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories about corruption and maybe even money laundering, not paying full contracts. One of the big things that's going on now with a lot of the European teams is you have to do an FIVB course on match manipulation. I don't know if you have any stories of offers for.
Well, we have rumors. Like we did have offers to win, to lose sets, just so that the opponent coach was betting. They would ask before so this has happened. Actually, it was last year, and then we suspect that we've seen some weird behaviors, during games, and we suspect that some players do some betting and then manipulate the games. So, I mean, it's not sport for me. I don't mind losing. I like winning, but I like competing most of all. And then we lose because the other team was better, not because we did it for other reasons. So, yeah, I think it's a problem that's not only in volleyball, but it's a problem that's, I think, worldwide in sport now. There's a lot of suspicion on this stuff. So hopefully they'll find ways to fix it. But we've had a couple of these experiences.
Crazy. Do you have any superstitions when you go into a game of things that you need to make sure you do in order to have your team?
Not at all. Not at all. No superstition. Just know that I don't like not being prepared. Like I like to have a whole method that I've created with the years, where I feel really ready. I know what the other team's going to do. I'm ready for if they do change things. I'll see it coming and stuff. No, superstition wise, no, not a big, at all actually. Just so many times in countries like Turkey where people say, oh, we're the same shirt, and then we ended up losing. So so it wasn't much much of a factor of chance, and it's just competition. And
so people putting their superstitions onto you and making you conform to that. Yeah.
Make us smile, and then maybe wear the same shirt. But I don't personally have any superstitions.
Okay. And you do read a lot. You've offered me a lot of different books, suggestions that I can read, especially that'll help me in my coaching journey. Are there any books that you would recommend that people start with in their?
One of the best book I've read is Legacy. It's the All Black story. I think the author is Graham Kerr, but I'm not sure. It's a small book, and it's a nice book for coaching. It's about culture. It's about all we need, like red head, blue head. having blue head during the game and not red head. So it's simple to read. It's really nicely written. I would recommend it strongly. Mindset was a good book by Carol Dweck, and it's all about challenges and having an open mindset. Basically, learning to face difficulty, learning to work hard, etc. So keeping your ego aside as you grow. So that's another excellent book. So there's a few more, but these two were quite influential.
And how do you come about these books? Do people recommend them to you?
I don't know. I just end up probably reading something, and then whoop, I'm gonna try to get that. Usually, as soon as I see, like a title go by and where that seems interesting, I'll research it, and then eventually I'll buy the book if it's interesting. So, or I read often a paper article, and then I see about Carol Dweck, for example, or if I read about. I don't know. Somebody I think recommended Legacy to me. So another great book was, but it's a little bit different. Is Extreme Ownership by Joe Kilkenny. It's like a story of it's the what's the army group, Navy SEALs, and how they approach missions and basically how the leader kind of takes upon himself like the full ownership of the consequences or of the outcome. So basically, if things don't go well, did I communicate well? Did I plan enough? So this was really good. I'm kind of like that. Like I've always said, if we lose, then something, I have to look at what went wrong. So look through the videos, look at where things, and then decide on what I should do to fix it, and then start the training again. This is an approach I have pretty well, kind of even weekly in the league. So basically, play the Saturday, do my whole prepare my debrief on Sunday with my stats and my performance indicator, decide on a strategy for the coming weeks, and then Monday I meet with the players and then talk to them on how it went, why it went good or bad, and then what are the things we need to do here in practice to be even better or to fix the problem. So that one, Extreme Ownership, kind of gives you. It's a bit more for businesses, but it's a really good book.
Okay. I envisioned there being like a cabal of the top coaches in the world who all share books amongst each other, sharing information, sharing books.
We did share information during COVID with a group of like Giovanni Guidetti, Daniel Castellani, a bunch of Italian, Brazilian coaches. We all got online. We did an interesting thing. We invited, so for example, the thematic would be setting. So we'd invite Bruno and the best Italian setter for women, both because they're both women, and then we'd talk to them, interview them, ask questions, and then an interesting thing with Bruno is he came in with a book and a pen, and when we were questioning or talking between us or questioning the female setter, he was writing notes on his book. This guy is like completely immersed into getting better all the time. So I was pretty impressed with that. So we did that with some middle blockers, and then we did stuff as coaches. We expose a problem. This is a really good way. Like if you can network coaches together. Sometimes coaches don't want to do that because they fear of sharing, information. But for me, it's that information is going to get out there eventually. So why not? And you learn so much from other coaches and stuff. So it was a super. We still have the group. We haven't met because we've been pretty busy lately. But probably we'll meet again. But that was really interesting, very interesting thing we did during COVID. We had quite a few of these Zoom calls, and it was great.
That was really cool. So there is a cabal. So
it was a cabal. It was a cabal, and then you do have coaches recommending books often. Yeah,
right. Okay. Oh, that's really cool. So when you're selecting players on your team, let's change gears a little bit. You're selecting players for your team in Arcas. What are you looking for kind of overall? What is your process in choosing players?
So I really like skilled players. I like when the game is played well. So you can have really strong physical guys maybe that are only good attackers, servers. But skills is important. Attitude is really important. this, I found that if you can find somebody maybe a bit less talented, but that's a real team guy, then you're gonna get huge benefits for the team. And we've had times where we've had players at huge ego that are really good players, but that were able to ruin a season. So attitude and confident players, yes. Players with huge ego, no. Not in a team sport anyway. And and then yeah, for sure, like skills to me is important. Like, so the way I look at the game is, if you take a court and you take each skills, like say setting, hitting, blocking, defending, receiving, per position. For sure, for a setter, you want him to be a playmaker, a setter, good, but you want him to also be a good defender in one, and a decent blocker in two, a decent server. If he doesn't have, so I've got all these skills determined per position, and then I give them a value, and you see where it's going to cost you. So, for example, if you have an opposite that doesn't defend, then that makes position one a hole. Basically, every time the ball is going to go there, it's going to be a minus for us. I want that. If I take this player, then I will make him work on getting 10%, 20% better, so that this area of the court doesn't become so costly. Same with a setter. Like, if he's not a blocker, then he has to be a pretty decent defender, server. I need to get some value out of it for the weakness he brings to position two, and so on. So this we really look at when we recruit a player, or look at recruiting a player. These are the different things we're going to be looking at to make sure that our court is smaller to score on. And for sure, like with my team, we have a lot of young players. Always try to bring the foreigners have to be fairly experienced guys. I could take a fourth foreigner that's young that I would take for the future, but otherwise, they have to have a certain level of experience. And that's why I don't want big egos, because, then they would be very condescending to the young guys, and that's our reality. We raise players, a lot of young players at ACAS, so they have to be used to having these guys with them. That's just the reality. So.
And so when you're comparing skill and ego, you're using video to assess their skill, or you have stats throughout?
Yeah, with video, we look at videos, and then we ask around. We ask players. If it's a foreigner, we can ask a coach. I've been asked many times by other coaches about players, and often I'll ask coaches about this player, and they'll say, yeah. And most coaches are pretty honest, so they'll say, yeah, good here, not so good here, great attitude, great work, this is okay, or and so on, so that's kind of the way we look at it.
Okay. And you've been instrumental in the national team success over the last couple of decades, bringing the team to the Olympics several times. What has changed in the Canadian culture in volleyball that propelled Canada forward and into kind of the driver's seat now?
Well, the first when I took over, it was, Canada was mostly a net team, like basically serving, blocking, and attacking. And when I was with France, the French are more like really smart players when they're attacking. And basically, I scouted against Canada 2 times. So at the Olympic qualifier for Athens, and then at World Cup. And it was basically, they were so weak in the back row, it was just put the ball in the back row, play around. They were physical, but the French knew how to play these big blockers, and stuff. So, and we ended up winning both times 3-0. So when I came, I knew these weaknesses, and we started by this. We started by reinforcing the base, making a thicker base, not being scored on so much. So we worked, and it took quite a bit of time. It took about 4 years where we could see really that we could reap this aspect. And it was really funny because we started like being a really good defending team, but we couldn't transition attack. So then that was the next step. We started working on high ball management, out of system stuff, and we evolved really well, and the team did okay. So, but I just needed to get the basics down, back to basics, because if you cannot pass a free ball in the money, you're gonna cost me. at the international level, and we weren't able even to do that. So we needed to do it consistently. Gavin Schmidt's a good example. Gav was a great attacker, great server, great blocker, and Gav, I said, Gav, I need you to dig balls. And Gav, being the guy he is, it just okay, sure. So it wasn't always pretty, but he dug balls. Gavin was good digger, and then he did the other job. But that area of the court was pretty, pretty secure as far as it was part of the whole system. So and I always insisted on this, like you need attackers, but you cannot have a complete open court in the back and be so we did that. We worked a lot with our setters, like starting with Dustin Schneider. We had a bunch of different setters there that came in, and we really it was really like a structured kind of 10-year project. We had it in my mind. I had it in my mind, and like, don't miss your serves. Trust you can play block defense, and then as we did that, then we said, okay, let's start to push our serve, but let's try to have more quality serve with the same amount of errors, which is the low errors I wanted in that case. So that evolved, and then we evolved in all the aspects of our game, and then caught up to the world and started challenging the world.
Is there any advice that you would give yourself, knowing all the things you do now, that you would give your younger self for those periods?
Not to be so hard on the player. Maybe, I could have approached it differently. I felt an urgency to get the things going, so we worked quite hard. But really, the group was amazing. Even started with the older group, and had significant players that made huge impact. That didn't necessarily went to the Olympics. There was the Dan Lewis, Pierre Mainville, Adam Simak, Fred Winters. There's many guys didn't go to the Olympics, but we're all building blocks, because what they did, those old guys, they just let the young guys come in, and then and we went through those really, really tough years, like from 2006 on to, we started emerging around 2013. We had some things, but we had some point 2010 victory against Serbia, but to say that we were consistent doing it, it really started around 2014. It took that long. But, and then we could see that, we have a chance to qualify for the Olympics with this group, and I think what happened after was just the sport picked up, and now we have a lot of young players that are coming up that I think can be international level players. And it's just a question of often physical maturity and then facing that level.
Is there anything before we wrap up that you would like to share with all the listeners?
No, just that soon it'll be the end for me. I think I just want to thank people for supporting me and supporting the volleyball in Canada. I think it's without them it would have been difficult. A lot of people. I probably have a list of 100 of people that directly or indirectly helped us to get through all these years, and the ups and downs and stuff. So without naming them, I would say thank you. I think, it was a great honor for me to work with these people too, and to represent Canada.
Wonderful. So to finish up, I always finish each episode with a game. Okay. And if you win, then you can win the cup. Okay. What did you think of the tea, by the way?
Very good.
So I don't know if you know the website Volleybox. It's like the Wikipedia for volleyball players and coaches. You're one of the top coaches in the world according to Volleybox, and according to everyone else, you're even higher. So it's not 100% a science on its ranking, but it does rank players based on the success that their teams had that they were on, as well as individual awards. Okay. And so what I thought would be a fun game is I picked 5 Canadian players. Maybe your top 5. For sure, there's one that'll be one of your favorite Canadian players of all time. And you have to rank them based on what you think their Volleybox ranking will be. Okay? So I'll share it with you here. If you want to select it. So we have Dan Lewis, Gord Perrin, Fred Winters, Nick Hoag, and Chris Both. If you know where you want to put someone, let's say you have someone here, and you know that this guy is going to be, probably here, I don't know. It's up to you to decide, but this is supposed to be a freebie. Okay. You can put them in whatever order you want.
Based on Volleybox, right?
Based on Volleybox, not based on your favorite, because I know I'd be right at the top, but where you think kind of they would rank. So just a tap first to select it, and then...
this way, I would think this... Let me... If I think like Volleybox, I'll go here. Sorry, Chris.
I'm happy you didn't put me so fast in fifth. That's good. So we have Gord Perrin first, Nick Hoag second, Fred Winters third, Dan Lewis fourth, and me fifth. I worked hard this year, but I guess I still have some room to grow. But congratulations, you went 5 for 5. Unbelievable. That's crazy. I thought it would be a little bit harder, but that was really strong.
They rank people, I didn't know.
Yeah, everyone has a player ranking. And there is for people who retired, they still have a ranking, but then there's a 2024 ranking as well. So, but 5 for 5 is the best result we've ever had on the podcast. So that's great. Thank you again so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I know everyone's will be so excited to hear from you. You've done so much for the country and for the team. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been great. Thank you so much.
That was a loud one.
That was a loud one. So thank you so much for coming back. We were really rushed because we had the game last time, so I cut it early. So we had to prepare for that game, obviously. So there was a few other questions that I had that I was really looking forward to. So now that you've seen Next Gen, undefeated Next Gen coach also.
Tournament.
You just got back from the Olympics. Yeah. You saw our Next Gen team compete the whole tournament now. Yeah. Is there something as a whole that Canada can improve on to put ourselves higher in the world compared to the other countries?
Yeah, if you go back on, yes, like it's because, countries, in a highly competitive world like that the high level of volleyball is right now, is that teams are always looking at finding edges. So if it's either in their developmental model, like the Polish team, the French team, the Italian team, they invest a lot in development, and they have a very good system, and it's really they really take care of teaching the right skills at an early age. So then they come at this level, and it's easy for Europe because they can assess the development of their athletes through European competition, which is really at a really high level, even at the U19 and U20 and U21 level. So we don't have that reality. So we need to, first thing I think is always, it's a skill sport. So, your systems are always based on the execution of your skills. And then you can bring creativity. But if you don't have that base, it's very, very difficult. So it's improved somewhat with time in Canada. But we still, with a lot of our next gen players have to work on correcting and giving them some tips on how to improve certain skills. And so serving and receiving, I think that ratio is super important now. Like the rest of the game, I think we can do with that ratio. We suffered a lot in the Olympics in that ratio of, if you can serve and put the ball in versus not taking so many points on receive and being able to get swings on most of your receive, then you're in pretty good shape. Otherwise, if you take too many points, like it happened in the Olympics, on receive, and your serving can be good, but as soon as one of these two is a little bit off, then often your opponent will take the advantage. So that's one key element that I would say we need to work on a lot.
Is there something that Canada can do at the grassroots to improve this? Like right now, there's a hot topic is the serve reception rule for the youth, where they have to use their arms, they're not allowed to use their hands. Do you think that this is an effective rule, or are there other rules that we can put in place or different structures that we can have?
I think that's an effective rule. I think also because I've heard rumored that the A5AV might go back to just underhand passing. So it is an effective rule. It forces you to move your feet, and but yeah, I think part of the problem is our kids are not as exposed as European kids who are already like a fairly high level of serving at a young age, and so I think if you improve both, it's better, because then if you improve the serving, usually your passing comes with it. So because you'll be training against good serving teams or good serving teammates in training. So that helps a lot. There's all the artificial means like the machines and stuff, but machines are guided. They don't have that extra kind of variation that a hand can have, yeah, so it's more predictable, and that obviously it's better for learning if it's random.
And there were two really interesting stories that throughout our time together in Dominican came about. One of them was an athlete that you had came from a poor family, poor country, and would only eat oranges.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing this story? I think it's really interesting to see kind of the people going into a different culture, and then him being maybe a little culture shocked, not really sure.
He was a tall player, about 2 meters 14. And I came from a really, really poor country where food is scarce. And he came and he was beat up. Like he had shoulder problem, he had back problems, but probably all of it is related to more problems with nutrition. He was in their national team center, and with us, he gained 6 kilos of muscle, and became, got rid of all his injuries and stuff. But we just had an approach where he just needed to eat more and more protein at that, because he was just used to eating fruit and stuff. And there was other part of his life, like where, he just came and had no idea how to behave, like cleaning his room, eating enough, behavior, all the behaviors in practice, he would forget everything. So, like that's you get all kinds of athletes. You work with all kinds of athletes. Canadian athletes are, I would say, somewhat pretty easy to work with. I work with Turkish athletes. I work with other cultures, and often they come from different backgrounds, different parents or no parents, or and so in this case of this individual, we needed to basically be like a father figure and teach him everything, like, and how to behave, in a more normal society. So it was a really good experience for me. Like, it's the difficult one, but also to convince the people around him that he's different. The teammates and stuff, like, couldn't understand the behavior. He would forget his shoes for training. He would forget his jerseys for games. He did, all kinds of things. So I almost started at zero with him, and then, build him. And he improved somewhat, but I'm always worried that kids that don't eat enough, are also cognitively could be affected, because that country doesn't have hardly any food. So, and so sometimes the learning process is just slower, So it is with some of our athletes too. It just depends on where they come from, what was provided to them, and stuff like that. And food is kind of major, as far as for the growth of the athlete and the mental development and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's so surprising for being one of the top coaches in the world, being with one of the top teams who's always competitive, and then you have to, guide a player this much. That's, I think, going to be really surprising for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's part of our job, no? Like, guiding people is what we do, like trying to get them to improve. They all want to be better. That's one thing, they all want to be better. In this case, it might mean, earning money doing this, because he doesn't have anything else. So, so it becomes a big responsibility for me to try to get him there, and give him the means to have a life, at least for the time that he'll be an athlete.
Yeah, and really fortunate for him that he ended up with someone like you that's willing to put that investment in. I just think about him being thrown into an environment where it'd be like into a pit of wolves, where it's you're not showing up, you're not doing this, or you're not doing that, not performing.
And we know in clubs this happens, right? We know that some clubs don't treat their athletes very well and stuff like that. There's all kinds of clubs. The kind of the pro idea for players is is what they see maybe in NBA and NHL, but it's not the reality of volleyball. Certain clubs, yes. Other clubs, not so much. So.
I think even for Canadian athletes, it's a shock a lot of the time. You know, and they come from experienced backgrounds, they come from good homes, a lot of them, and it's still a shock when they get there. So
yeah, and just mind you that the difference in season also, like a youth sports season is so short, and then they're thrown into an 8-month season away from home. It's an adaptation. It takes time, and hopefully they can fall into some good clubs, because if that's negative as well, then it really takes a toll on the athlete.
one of the most crazy stories I heard from you was you were with a team in another country and 2 players might have gotten drugged or something, and then were robbed and just woke up in a random place. But do you want to share this?
Yeah, we were traveling. In another country. It was in World League at that time, and we ended up in Osaka. And so I gave the guys a day off, and I said, "You can go out and enjoy yourselves and stuff." And they ended up, getting drugged somehow. I think drug put in their beers or something. And one athlete made it back to the hotel. I don't know how he did it, but he was completely confused. And the other one didn't make it back and woke up in an alley, and he had been robbed from everything and stuff. So just criminals, that did that, and saw the foreigners, saw an opportunity. But it was scary for the individual that woke up in the alley, because the one guy came back early in the morning, the other guy came back late in the afternoon. We were really, really worried. We didn't know where he was and stuff like that. So for a coach, it's like, oof, like, where are they and what's going on? What happened? So and luckily both of them were okay. And we pursued the competition. We did actually really well, and but it was quite the experience. Something that you just completely unexpected.
Right. Yeah, that's unbelievable that something like that could happen.
Yeah. So,
I don't know if there's other stories that you would want to share from over the years that.
I've got some stories, like for sure, like in club, being in Turkey and going to the border of Iraq and Iran and Syria, and seeing all the, we hear nothing happens special, but you see all kinds of ethnicity, like in the Kurdish area, and there's like in the one city we saw clans. And we saw a wedding. There was a big wedding in a big yard, and we're in the hotel watching, and all of a sudden we heard gunshots, and this guy shooting guns in the air, to celebrate the wedding. And the people were dancing, they had all the women had like gold. The gold, there was a big thing in that. We're right on the Syrian border. Like you can see actually the fence from the hotel. And this group of these clans, they were marrying 2 of their kids, and so we just kind of went, wow, what this gun stuff, and they were just kind of shooting in the air and reloading, shooting in the air. So it was kind of, like we're in a different place, and
you wonder where those bullets end
customs.
Up too,
Yeah. Well, that's why we were watching from the, I think, the 10th floor. I said we went in the rooms. We just didn't want to find out where the bullets were going.
Right. Yeah, that's terrifying. That's crazy.
Yeah. So those, there's a few stories like this. Very interesting ones.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to come into this room because there's so much history here. But one of the first pictures on the wall is you, one of the founders of the program and someone who built it up so much. When you look around and you see these pictures, where do you kind of see the program going, and are we on path to get there?
I think we're okay. Like we've put down some good foundations, and it's, for me, it's always, you always have to be trying to, you have to be ready for change. Change is always coming. Like you look at, there's always some change. I was watching the US match this afternoon. They went 4-man receive almost all the time. So probably they found that, we need to actually keep the ball on our side with those strong servers. And I'm a big proponent of this, but this is kind of new, right? And so, when I look at the pictures, they're all different moments where the team, in the history of that growth, had successes, and like we could say, okay, here we're here now, and it was fun. It was like originally I remember doing just like a lot of back row training for like almost all the beginning. The first 4 years, we just stabilized a lot of our skills because we weren't very good at it. And we were good at the net when we could get the ball like in the setter's hands, but we couldn't do that often enough. We didn't defend anything. We were good blockers, but teams started to. So all this stuff we did, and then it was funny because in 2010 at the World Championship, in those days we weren't in World League. We play these top teams, and we see that we're really good at digging. We've worked on it, but not good at transitioning and killing balls on out of system stuff. So we started, once we got that evidence, we started working a little bit more on that aspect. And there's always something coming up where we could improve. But the only way we could test it in reality was as soon as we got into World League, then we had more competition to be able to judge our progression. As before, we would work all summer in the gym and then have World Championship. So we didn't have much competition, and that's where the best assessment is as far as where you're at against big teams. So as we got there, we got better and better and better, and we started, also getting invited by Brazilians and stuff like this. Started more respect. So we were getting, really good matches against these big teams. So again, more evidence on what we needed to work on. We were able to tweak, kind of start looking at, okay, like we're playing consistently well this way against Brazil and Serbia and US, and okay, that's where we need to improve here, if we want to make a difference eventually. So, yeah, so the involvement, but it's always ongoing. It's always ongoing because the others are doing that, and not having a pro league. It's more difficult for us. We have to send our athletes post-university to the pro leagues and then get them to grow a little bit more. So in comparison to European athletes, our athletes, mature later, because they're not as exposed. They're exposed to youth sport level. They're student athletes. The pro level is a different thing. And so you need to adapt both physically, technically, and the guys are doing a good job at that. Like, this year with our next gen team, we had like quite a few guys that are coming back from pro league, and will be probably the next guys, for 28 and 32. So.
I really appreciate your time, and it's been an honor being alongside you as a coach this time for the first time this summer. So thank you for that.
It was a lot of fun.
Definitely, and there's still one more tournament for you to go.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's great.
But you won't be there.
I won't be there. No.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you for doing this. Actually, it's very informative, and also being with us and being part of this big project that is Team Canada. So.
Definitely, it's an honor to be part of it. So thank you.
You're welcome.